Coming up on today's show.
I think of things for papers in three separate ways. Actionable papers, the second is filing, and I think of that as reference papers, and the third is archiving. Those are the papers we have to keep the longest time, but we don't have to keep them so accessible like our filing.
Now, maybe we should ask today, are we going to be talking about archiving just paper, or are we going to talk paper and digital?
Some of the things most pertinent, of course, have to do with our taxes. We have to keep them for the longest duration. And I always tell people, everybody's situation is a little different, so consult your accountant and your lawyer.
Archiving your documents today on Keeping You Organized. Hello and welcome to Keeping You Organized. Archiving documents is something we talk a lot about, maybe don't always do the way we should, but it's very important in the overall scope of keeping things and filing. And so we are going to talk about archiving today. It's actually one of those topics that we get a lot of questions about. And to help us is our friend Ellen DeLapp. Ellen, how are you today?
Great. Well, thanks for having me, John.
You bet. Well, certified professional organizer and family manager coach, professional-organizer.com is your domain. And so we are excited to talk about archiving. And maybe we do we need to define what archiving is, or do you think everyone pretty much understands that?
That's a really good question. We probably do need a little definition. I think of things for papers in three separate ways. Actionable papers, the second is filing, and I think of that as reference papers, and the third is archiving. Those are the papers we have to keep the longest time, but we don't have to keep them so accessible like our filing. So the archive papers are often the ones that we want to get to another area, perhaps store in a file bin in a less accessible spot in our house or office.
Okay. Now, maybe we should ask today, are we going to be talking about archiving just paper, or are we going to talk paper and digital, or how they mix together? How do you want to go down the avenue here today?
Well, we can primarily talk about paper, but I think digitally, one of the things I find too is we have to have outstanding backup for our digital files, because more and more we know how important they're going to be for us. So.
Okay. Great. Well, maybe what we should start off with is what should we be archiving? I mean, what do we need to keep? Because some people would say, well, I just keep everything, but that's not practical. Do you have any rules or ideas on what we should keep in the first place?
Absolutely. Some of the things most pertinent, of course, have to do with our taxes. We have to keep them for the longest duration. And I always tell people, everybody's situation is a little different, so consult your accountant and your lawyer. But generally speaking, we want to keep tax preparation documents for 7 years, and also the tax documents we submit to the government forever, which is astounding to most of my clients. We also want to keep legal documents, such as our house purchases and sales and other legal documents, for a duration. And then a lot of our financial documents have to be kept a long time. Say we're saving funds for our children's college education. We want to know, what did we purchase that investment for when we go to sell it? So there are several documents that are very specific to knowing that we need to archive. But some of my clients feel comfortable archiving several other things that have to do with their health care, medical, some of their credit cards. So there's a little room for interpretation in there.
Right. Well, I want to step back there for a second, because you said, do we have to keep tax records? I thought it was 7 years. I mean, are some of those you're supposed to keep forever?
Well, the actual documentation you send to the government, and most of us send it electronically now, so we may not even have a paper copy. Again, that's that overlap with the digital. So most accountants recommend you keep all of your tax filings.
Okay. All right. Well, that's really good to know, because some people might say, well, I only needed to keep it. I know you can go back and do, revised tax, returns and things like that. And so it is important to keep. Well, now let's talk about the concept of archiving and how you work it into a regular routine. Because, is archiving something you should be doing every day? Or is it something that you do once a week, once a month? Is there a rhythm for archiving that you think is good?
I generally suggest doing it right around when you're doing your tax preparation, because it's most natural. If you have the end of the year has come, and most of us keep these archives chronologically as well as by category. But generally speaking, it's something you could do just once a year, and it would probably take you a couple hours. So maybe incentivize it for yourself, get a cup of coffee, do your organizing to music, and maybe have a partner with you, maybe your husband or one of your kids can help you. So just having a routine and knowing that it's coming up, marking your calendar so you're ensured that this happens makes it much easier. And even if you've gotten really behind in this, that's okay, because you can still separate by year and know that you might keep 2014, you might keep 2013, but maybe you don't want to keep things farther back than that.
Right. Okay. Well, let's talk about the concept. I want to go just a little bit deeper in on that, because if you're doing this, just say at tax time, that means over the course of the 12 months leading up to that. So we say we just got done with our taxes. Now let's. What happens to that stuff you're going to be archiving in that 11-month period between archives?
Well, there's really simple systems you can put into place. You can either create filing that is the simplest system, which is the one big box for the year, 2015. That makes it easy, and then you just sort through those papers. Or you could have general filing categories that have to do with the big things that go on, such as personal, financial, and health, that kind of thing. So it depends on what works best for you. I like to keep the systems really simple for my clients, because when we have really specific categories, it prevents people from filing often.
Right. Well, let's talk about a client, maybe a archiving system that you've put out, and just kind of put a face and a story behind how that got set up, how they did it before, and then how after you worked with them, it ended up working out.
So their before system might have been, if they were a more organized client, they might have had things in their filing drawer, and it came to tax time, and we pulled out each of the different areas that pertain to their taxes. And then we went also into other documents that have built up through the year, such as medical documents like doctor bills and explanation of benefits. You don't have to keep those after a year, but if they decided to, we group them into a hanging file and put them into a file bin and label the side of the file bin with that year. The same thing went on with their credit card statements. They don't have to keep those for more than a year, but they don't feel comfortable letting them go.
Okay, well, let's talk about the supplies then that you would need. You talked like bins, you talked about hanging folders. What's kind of like the minimum kinds of supplies you'd want to use when you're setting up an archiving system?
So I love to use the 3-inch tabs because they're bigger and we can see them better and we can write more on them as a result. So on the tabs, we have the very general categories that are going into the bin, such as credit cards, medical statements, explanation of benefits, utilities. So it just gives us some subdivision in the bin that keeps order and the process going that we've started establishing in their regular files. So often if you've been organized in your regular files, all you do is just pull those hanging files and place them in this bin. So it's just a natural extension of what you've been doing all along.
Great. And we know where people can get those hanging files too. In fact, we're going to take
Yes, we do.
we're going to take a quick little break here, and when we come back, I want to talk more about this concept of an annual archiving routine or system. So we'll do that. We're with Ellen DeLapp, a certified professional organizer and family manager coach with professional-organizer.com on keeping you organized right now, and we will be right back.
When you've got it together, everyone can tell. Your confidence is obvious. Introducing Viewables.com from Smead. Use the Viewables labeling system to transform your drawer of hanging files into a tidy, organized filing system. Using the premium hanging folder tabs, see the label from the front, top, and back. It's easy. Access Viewables.com from any computer, tablet, or internet-enabled smartphone. Let's make some labels. It's free, and there's nothing to download or install. Choose the label type and format your label just the way you want. You can even add index characters or icons for distinctive filing. Set up a free Viewables cloud account, and your secure login lets you save your projects for convenient access from any computer. And with Viewables multi-purpose labels, you can use one label for any type of file, including hanging folders, top tab folders, super tab folders, or oversized items like notebooks and file boxes. Upload a list of file headings and print your complete set of labels in moments. There's even a library of templates for commonly used label sets. It's never been easier to set up neat-looking files that have easy-to-read headings and efficient color codes. Obviously organized. Viewables.com. From Smead, keeping you organized.
We are back now on Keeping You Organized, talking about archiving your documents. And we are joined by Ellen DeLapp, certified professional organizer, family manager, coach, professional-organizer.com. And Ellen, we talked a little bit about this in the first part, but I want to expand on it now about this concept of an annual archive and maybe why that's important.
Well, I love it because so many times my clients will tell me, I created the best filing system ever in 1999 and I never went back to it.
Right.
And I think, wow, well, we're really missing the whole value of our system because we want to know what's in there. It's current. So this keeps your files current. It also is surprising to me how much when your files are jammed, you don't file anymore. So this helps you by emptying things out and putting them in a new place. And then I think just knowing what you have in your files, you had referred earlier to how much we're going to digital access to information. There's so many fewer things we need to keep in our papers now because we can find them digitally. And as a result, it just keeps you current and knowledgeable about what information you have and what information you need to gather.
Right. Well, now I want to take, when you're doing this annual review, and maybe this is a nuancy kind of a question, but are you also maybe purging some files too, maybe at that point saying, you know what, I don't need to keep this, or are we just dealing with things that have been set aside that we know we're going to keep?
No, absolutely. We're always thinking about what don't we need, what can we let go of. One of my colleagues says our goal in filing is to keep as little as possible, not to keep as much as possible.
Right. So I mean, how would you, is there like a set of questions you'd ask, or is it just pretty obvious, do I need this or not? I mean,
I think where else can we find this information and how long do we need this information for? You know, the rule of thumb with utilities is most people will only need them for a year. Well, really, if you've been collecting your statements that come every month, you may not need them at all because you've paid them online, you have another record of how you've paid them, so you can definitely shred them. And I always refer people about shredding as if it has an account number on it, it should be shredded. If it just has your name or address, it can, be recycled at that point. So we're definitely letting go of, most of the financial things are things we need to keep longer, but some of the things I've found that my clients tend to keep that have definitely lost value are personal interest things that have to do with their hobbies, parenting, lifestyle, health. There's so many more ways to get information, and throughout a number of years, people have accumulated this. It doesn't need to be archived. It needs to be released.
Right. You touched on it. We didn't talk a lot about this in the first half, but medical. What kinds of medical documents do you think need to be archived versus just, deleted?
A lot of times people have had catastrophic medical situations. Those are things that we might need to archive. But in terms of medical history, that's something you want to keep in your files all the time. But even your doctor bills, at the end of the year, you may not have accumulated enough of a investment to have that be a tax situation. So you can release those and shred those as well.
Okay, now we said we were going to primarily talk about paper, and that's the paper archiving here, but we can't ignore the elephant in the room, which is digital. And how do you see digital working alongside paper in an archiving system, and what kinds of systems do you set up that maybe have both involved?
I like to parallel paper and digital because I think it's easiest if we only think of one set of categories. But I definitely like to archive things by year because, again, we're usually only referencing the current year when we're doing whatever kind of documentation. So there's definitely ways people have started accumulating these utility bills online through a system called File This, where they automatically are coming as a PDF. So once you've accumulated them grouping them into chronologically, you can definitely delete them.
Right. Well,
and I usually suggest backing up either with an online system with a cloud backup or with an external hard drive. So everybody needs to have that conversation, like, what is my backup plan?
Right. Now, what kinds of systems have you seen, either the electronic ones? I'm assuming they all, but this File This, is that a scanning system, or is that something where you set up with your the people you're getting your bills from? How does that work? And is there a certain system that you like using electronically?
Well, File This actually captures the information when it comes directly onto, it's an automated system. The scanning is a great setup because, again, you can scan, and when you're naming your files, name them with the year so that they're also chronological to start with, which is, having a consistent naming convention as you're starting doing your scanning is a very important part of the scanning process, so that you always know, what do I have? What did I name it? Where do I find it? So having that date in there can be a very important part of that project.
Let's go down that road a second. So we go with year first. Would you do like 2015 dash, or I mean, how many layers do you put into your naming of a document, or I mean, do you go beyond just the year?
I usually go beyond the year. I put in 3 different components. So I usually put in the year, who the bill is coming from, and then the month, that kind of thing. If it's a bill. If it's other information, I try to see like what's the general category, and then go into something more specific. So it goes very, very year, general, more specific information.
Yes. And you have 3 layers there as well. Okay. All right. Now, have we covered everything we need to as far as the annual archive review, or is there any points that I'm missing here?
I think we've covered it pretty well, John.
Okay, good.
I think the main thing is to really think of a system that's going to get you started doing it, because I think most of us have great intentions, but we can always get started by just making sure we have a date on our calendar, so that we're committed to it.
Well, and it reminded me, I was just we have a lake home, but I was just up there last weekend, and the fire alarm was going, or not,
chirping.
Chirping. That was the word I was looking for. Anyway, and they say, well, if you always change, when it goes to daylight savings time or whatever, you change the batteries every time at 1 year. That's your cue. And same with, it sounds like tax time. You kind of need to grab a bunch of these documents anyway, so that might be a good time to also set up this annual archiving time, because you're already dealing with the documents anyway. So that's a great tip.
It's good. It's what I call a compelling reason. You absolutely have to get those taxes done.
Okay. Well, we almost are out of time here, but I want to give you a chance to tell people about your business, what kinds of work you do, how they can get a hold of you, your website, and your service area. I know you're in the Texas area, but you also do virtual as well. Isn't that correct?
That's right. So my business, primarily, I work with clients who are ADHD. I love working with my creative, resourceful clients. I work primarily in not only productivity, but also just residential and small business areas. And I'm in the greater Houston area.
Okay.
So I love engaging with people on social media. I'm on Pinterest, Facebook, Twitter. And I love being connected to our resources like you guys are, so that, we can help our clients do their best work.
Great. And the website, pretty easy to remember. What is it?
professional-organizer.com.
That's great. I love it. Well, Ellen, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I think this archiving topic is one that's always a good topic of discussion. And I think it's actually our first podcast where we've dedicated just the podcast to archiving. So this one will get a lot of listens and views, I'm sure.
Great.
And we'll definitely archive this as well in our list of podcasts, which you can find at smead.com/podcast. So, well, thanks, Ellen, for joining us today. Now we know what and when to archive our documents. So this show will also be archived at smead.com/podcast. Until next time, John Hunt for Smead and Keeping You Organized. Coming up next time on Keeping You Organized.
Because I thought we just need to be very diligent in thinking about what are we going to let across the threshold of our home.
So it's been very liberating. I just set up a box and started throwing 5-10 things in a day, and things have piled up, and I'm just amazed at how much you can clean out and not have to maintain.